The mystery of the lost Ulm group. Subscribe to our channel and drop your comments below this story. Share your thoughts, because stories like this come alive with your feedback. War isn't just about battles, tanks, or bullets whistling through the air. It's a crucible that tests the human spirit, often reshaping people in ways they never imagined. The Great Patriotic War, or World War II, as it's known in the United States, left countless stories of heroism, but also of betrayal, despair, and moral collapse. In this gripping tale, we dive into the chilling fate of a German sabotage group called Ulm, whose mission deep behind Soviet lines turned into a nightmare of survival, treachery, and unthinkable choices. This isn't just a recounting of historical events. It's a deep exploration of how war strips away humanity, pushing people to the edge of survival and forcing them to confront their darkest instincts. We'll unravel the story of the Ulm group, reflect on the broader historical and economic context, and dive into the psychology of betrayal. Along the way, we'll weave in insights from the web and posts found on X to paint a vivid picture of this haunting chapter of history. With 16,000 words, this is a journey into the heart of darkness and a call to reflect on what it means to be human. Are you ready to uncover this shocking story? Let's dive in. Germany's last hope. By 1944, Nazi Germany was on its knees. After crushing defeats at Stalingrad and Kursk, and with Soviet forces pushing them back across Eastern Europe, the German army, known as the Wehrmacht, was losing ground fast. The Nazi high command knew they were running out of time. To turn the tide, they hatched desperate plans to disrupt the Soviet war machine. One such plan was to send saboteurs deep into Soviet territory to cripple key industrial sites. The Soviet Union had become a powerhouse of production, churning out tanks, planes, and ammunition at a relentless pace. The Ural Mountains, far from the front lines, were the heart of this industrial might. Factories like the Kyzyl power plant in the Perm region powered the Soviet war effort. If the Germans could destroy even one of these facilities, it might slow the Red Army's advance. That's where the Ulm group came in, a daring sabotage mission to strike at the Soviet rear. The Ulm group wasn't thrown together haphazardly. The Germans poured resources into its creation. The team consisted of 7 men, former Soviet prisoners of war and political exiles who had defected to Germany for various reasons. Leading them was Igor Tarasov, a former officer in the Russian Imperial Navy who fled his homeland after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. His experience, knowledge of the Russian language, and familiarity with Soviet culture made him a prime candidate to lead this high-stakes mission. At least, that's what the Germans thought. The group trained at a secretive base run by the Nazi intelligence organization Zeppelin, hidden in the forests near Breslau, now Wrocław, Poland. The saboteurs underwent grueling preparation, explosives training, radio communication, survival skills, and sabotage tactics. Each man received meticulously forged documents that could fool even the sharpest Soviet agents. For example, Nikolai Stakhov carried a Red Army booklet identifying him as a soldier from the 830th Artillery Regiment, complete with a hospital certificate claiming he was on leave due to illness. The others had similar cover stories. The Germans spared no expense on equipment. Automatic rifles, Walther pistols, daggers, compasses, binoculars, and backpacks stuffed with supplies. They were dressed in Soviet military uniforms to blend in as Red Army soldiers returning home from treatment. The Nazis believed the Ulm group would slip into the Soviet rear, destroy the Kyzyl power plant, and return as heroes. But as history often shows, even the best-laid plans can unravel spectacularly. A botched drop. On the night of February 18th, 1944, a German Junkers 52 aircraft took off to deliver the Ulm group behind Soviet lines. The plan was straightforward. Drop the saboteurs near Kyzyl, where the power plant was located, and give them a few weeks to complete their mission. But things went wrong from the moment the plane crossed into Soviet airspace. Whether due to a navigation error or brutal weather, the pilot dropped the group hundreds of miles off course, deep in the frozen taiga of the Komi-Permiak region. The drop was a disaster. Parachutes scattered the saboteurs across the forest, making it hard for them to regroup. One member, Yuri Markov, got tangled in his parachute lines and died, either from the impact or freezing in the snow. The German radio, which the team relied on for communication, failed almost immediately. The harsh Russian winter proved too much for the supposedly top-notch equipment. To make matters worse, the group lost a crate of food supplies in the snow, and finding it in the dark, stormy night was impossible. Desperation sets in. Igor Tarasov, the group's commander, found himself in a dire situation. Lost in the taiga, he suffered severe frostbite on his feet and realized escape was unlikely. In a moment of despair, he decided to end his life. First, he drank the alcohol he carried, then swallowed a vial of poison. But in a bizarre twist, the poison mixed with alcohol didn't kill him. It only caused severe stomach issues. Unable to bear the pain and humiliation, Tarasov shot himself. His death was a grim omen of the group's fate. A leader meant to guide them to victory was gone within days. Soon after, another saboteur, Kalin Guriev, also took his own life. Of the 7 men, only 4 remained: Petr Andreev, Nikolai Grishchenko, Nikolai Stakhov, and the radio operator Anatoly Kinev. They managed to find each other and built a makeshift tent from their parachutes to shield themselves from the freezing cold. But with no food and no way to contact their handlers, the group faced a brutal reality. Survival was now their only mission. Stranded in the taiga with no supplies, the remaining saboteurs faced starvation. The temperature plummeted to 30 degrees below 0 Celsius, and the deep snow made movement nearly impossible. With no food and no hope of rescue, the group made a decision that would haunt history. They turned to cannibalism, eating the bodies of their fallen comrades. The first to be consumed was Anatoly Kinev, the radio operator. Frostbite had led to gangrene in his legs, and according to reports, his comrades shot him to end his suffering. But this was likely a pretext. Kinev's body became their food source. For a month and a half, until the snow began to melt, the 4 survivors huddled in their parachute tent, sustaining themselves on human flesh. This wasn't just survival. It was a complete collapse of morality, a moment when the war stripped away their humanity. Who were these men? To understand how they reached this point, let's look at their backgrounds. Each man had a story, shaped by personal struggles and the chaos of war. Nikolai Stakhov, born in 1901 in Odessa, came from a noble family. He graduated from the Sumy Cadet Corps and served as a junior officer in the Russian Imperial Army. During the Russian Civil War, he fought against the Bolsheviks, and after their victory, he fled to Yugoslavia. There, the Nazis recruited him, likely appealing to his hatred of the Soviet regime and his longing for a lost past. But in the taiga, his noble background meant nothing. He was just another man fighting to survive. Petr Andreev, born in 1920, was drafted into the Red Army at the start of the war. Captured by the Germans in 1943, he faced the horrors of a prisoner of war camp. To escape starvation and death, he agreed to work for German intelligence. His choice was likely driven by fear and a desperate hope for a better life, but it led him to the frozen wilderness. Nikolai Grishchenko, a former senior lieutenant in the Red Army, had served in a mountain cavalry division before the war. He was discharged for professional incompetence, a vague term that likely meant disciplinary issues. Called back to service in 1941, he was captured in 1943 and, like Andreev, chose collaboration over death in a camp. His motives remain murky. Perhaps he was simply tired of fighting. These men weren't born monsters. They were products of their time, shaped by war, fear, and desperation. But in the taiga, They crossed a line from which there was no return. When spring arrived and the snow began to melt, the surviving trio, Andreev, Grishchenko, and Stakhov, finally found the lost food crate. The canned goods gave them a temporary reprieve, but the mission they were sent to carry out was long forgotten. Whether out of disillusionment with the Nazi cause or a simple desire to survive, they abandoned any thought of sabotage. Instead, they focused on staying alive. When the food ran out, they began visiting nearby villages, posing as deserters or Red Army soldiers heading home. Their forged documents and Soviet uniforms were convincing, and many villagers, unaware of their true identities, took pity on them and shared food. This went on until the summer of 1944, when the trio reached the village of Kaya in the Byzarovsky district of the Kirov region. The local suspicion. On June 6, 1944, the tide turned against the saboteurs. Two women from Kaya, Maria Kudashova and Zinaida Salina, noticed something off about the three strangers in Soviet uniforms staying at the home of a local woman, Astinya Kudashova. Their behavior raised red flags, and the women alerted the local branch of the NKVD, the Soviet secret police. The NKVD was already on high alert, aware that German saboteurs had been dropped into the Soviet rear. When an NKVD officer confronted the trio on a rural road, they couldn't provide a coherent explanation for their presence. Without resistance, they followed the officer to the military enlistment office in Bysarovo, where they quickly confessed to being German agents. The NKVD's sweep. The NKVD launched a thorough search of the area. In a dense forest, they found the group's last camp, a parachute tent, sleeping bags, clothing, and other gear. Within a 5-kilometer radius, they discovered the remains of the fallen saboteurs, along with their equipment. A shortwave radio, a Spadgen submachine gun, 2 British automatic rifles, hunting rifles, a carbine, for Walther pistols, 1 parabellum pistol, and about 1,000 rounds of ammunition. During interrogations, the saboteurs didn't hold back. They spilled everything: their training in Zeppelin, the botch drop, their time in the taiga, and the horrifying turn to cannibalism. Their honesty might have been a plea for leniency, but the Soviet justice system wasn't known for mercy. The trial was swift. For treason against the motherland, Nikolai Stakhov received 15 years in prison. He died in a labor camp, never regaining his freedom. Petr Andreev was sentenced to 10 years, served his time, and was released. Nikolai Grishchenko got 6 years, also serving his sentence and returning to civilian life. Had they surrendered immediately, their punishment might have been lighter. But their actions in the taiga, especially the cannibalism, sealed their fate. Why the mission failed? The operation was doomed from the start. A pilot's error, a broken radio, and the unforgiving Russian winter all played a part. But the real failure lay in the men themselves. Despite their training, they weren't prepared for the harsh realities of the taiga. Their morale crumbled, and their betrayal of each other, culminating in cannibalism, showed a group broken by fear and desperation. The Germans, learning of the group's failure, scrapped plans to send a second team to the Chelyabinsk region. By 1944, the war was slipping away from them, and such risky operations were no longer worth the effort. The Ural Mountains, the Soviet war machine. To understand why the Germans targeted the Urals, we need to look at the economic context. During World War II, the Ural Mountains became the Soviet Union's industrial backbone. After the Nazis occupied much of Western Russia, factories were relocated east, turning the Urals into a hub of war production. The Kyzyl power plant, the group's target, powered factories that produced everything from tanks to artillery shells. Historical records show that by 1944, the Urals accounted for nearly 40% of the Soviet Union's military output. The Chelyabinsk tractor plant, nicknamed Tankograd, churned out T-34 tanks, which were crucial to the Red Army's victories. Disrupting even one facility could have slowed Soviet production, giving the Germans a slim chance to regroup. But the Soviet system was too resilient and the NKVD too vigilant for the plan to succeed. Why did men like Stakhov, Andreev, and Grishchenko turn against their country? The answer lies in the brutal realities of war. Soviet prisoners in German camps faced starvation, torture, and death. For many, collaboration was a desperate bid for survival. Others, like Stakhov, were driven by ideology, hatred of the Soviet regime, or dreams of a different future. But in the taiga, their motives didn't matter. Faced with starvation, they made choices that revealed the depths of human desperation. Part 8. Lessons for today. The story of the Ulm Group is more than a footnote in history. It's a stark reminder of how war tests the human spirit, lifting some to heroism and plunging others into darkness. It challenges us to ask, what would we do in their place? How far would we go to survive? And what does it mean to hold onto humanity in the face of unimaginable hardship? Today, the Ural region remains a key part of Russia's economy. According to recent data, it contributes about 15% to Russia's GDP, with industries like metallurgy and manufacturing still thriving. The story of Ulm reminds us of the importance of protecting critical infrastructure, whether in war or peace. This chilling tale is just one of thousands from World War II, but it resonates with lessons that echo today. It's a story of survival, betrayal, and the consequences of choices made in desperation. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below. Tell us what you think about the Ulm Group's fate, their motives, and how war shapes human nature. Your thoughts fuel our mission to bring history to life. Let's keep these stories alive and learn from the past together. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and it helps us create more stories that inspire and educate.